Have you ever stopped in the midst of chaos to ask yourself why, despite everything you do, peace seems to constantly elude you? Perhaps you've sought tranquility outside yourself, in relationships, recognition, possessions. Yet that feeling of deep calm remains elusive, like water slipping through your fingers. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to become your own refuge, to be able to find peace even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. This isn't an unattainable fantasy. It's a real possibility that Carl Jung, one of the most profound psychologists of all time, explored throughout his life and work. Jung discovered something fascinating about human nature, that true peace doesn't depend on external circumstances, but on our ability to connect with our deepest essence. This is a truth that the modern world seems to have forgotten, as it bombards us with messages making us believe that happiness lies in something outside ourselves. Peace of mind, Jung said, only comes when we stop seeking approval. Think about it. How many of your decisions are motivated by the desire to be accepted, admired, or simply not judged by others? Jung invites us to reflect on this because every time you act from that place, you're handing your personal power over to factors you cannot control. The chaos of today's world seems specifically designed to keep us disconnected from ourselves. From social media to work demands, everything conspires to pull us away from our center. You wake up and, before connecting with yourself, you're already connected to the world, checking notifications, responding to messages, absorbing information that, in most cases, only feeds your anxiety. And in the midst of that external storm, Jung offers us an internal compass. He reminds us that there exists a sacred space within us where our true nature resides, that core that remains unaltered despite circumstances. The peace we seek isn't about calming the external storm, but about finding that immutable center that exists within us. But how do we access that internal source of peace when everything seems to conspire to distract us? Jung dedicated much of his life to exploring the path toward the integration of the self, toward what he called individuation. This process isn't a final destination, but a constant journey of self-discovery and acceptance. The first step in this journey is recognizing that peace isn't the absence of problems, but the ability to maintain your center despite them. Jung understood that challenges are inevitable, but our response to them is what determines our internal experience. Have you noticed how some people seem to maintain their serenity even in the most difficult situations? It's not that they have fewer problems, it's that they've developed a different relationship with them. For Jung, much of our internal unrest comes from disconnection with the unconscious, that vast territory within us that contains not only our shadows but also our deepest resources. When we ignore the signals from the unconscious, when we repress emotions or deny parts of ourselves, we're creating an internal storm that will eventually manifest in our external life. Think about the last time you felt a deep uneasiness for no apparent reason. Perhaps it was your unconscious trying to communicate with you, showing you that something in your life wasn't aligned with your true nature. Jung taught us that these signals aren't something we should fear or ignore, but valuable messengers guiding us toward greater integrity and therefore toward deeper peace. One of the most powerful concepts Jung developed was that of the shadow. That part of ourselves that we've repressed, denied, or ignored because it doesn't fit with the image we want to project. It could be your anger, your vulnerability, your deepest desires, or even your talents. What we don't recognize in ourselves doesn't disappear. It simply sinks into the depths of the unconscious, where it continues to influence our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Shadow work is essential for finding inner peace, because, as Jung said, what you deny submits you, what you accept transforms you. As long as you continue denying parts of yourself, you'll be at war with yourself. And it's impossible to find lasting peace when there's a constant internal battle. Have you ever wondered why sometimes you react disproportionately to seemingly insignificant situations? Perhaps someone makes a casual comment and you feel an anger that seems to come from nowhere. Or maybe you find yourself inexplicably attracted to or repelled by certain people for no apparent reason. Jung taught us that these reactions are often projections of our shadow. We see in others what we don't want to see in ourselves. Recognizing and accepting your shadow doesn't mean acting from it, but consciously integrating it so it stops controlling your life from the shadows. It's a process of self-knowledge that requires courage, but that frees you from the burden of maintaining a facade, of pretending to be someone you're not completely. And in that liberation, you find a peace that doesn't depend on external approval. Jung also spoke extensively about the importance of finding a balance between our different facets. We all have a persona, that social mask we show to the world. It isn't inherently negative, it's a necessary tool for social interaction. However, when we identify too much with our persona, forgetting who we really are behind it, we create a disconnection that moves us away from our inner peace. Imagine for a moment that you've built your entire identity around being a provider, a caretaker, a successful person, or any other role. What happens when that role is threatened? When you lose your job, your children grow up and no longer need you in the same way, or you face failure. If your sense of worth is completely tied to that external identity, the change can be devastating. Jung invites us to remember that we are much more than our social roles, more than our achievements, more than our relationships. True peace comes from knowing and accepting yourself in your totality, not just the parts that the world celebrates, but also those that you've kept hidden, even from yourself. It's as if, throughout your life, you've been trying to navigate with only half of your map. The inner work that Jung proposes is recovering that complete map, recognizing all the territories of your being to be able to navigate with greater wisdom and balance. But this work isn't always easy or comfortable. Jung warned that there is no birth of consciousness without pain. Facing our internal truths can be challenging. It requires letting go of limiting beliefs, destructive patterns, and perhaps even relationships that no longer serve us. However, the cost of avoiding this work is much greater, a life of constant restlessness, of seeking outside what can only be found within. Have you noticed that people often seek peace in the very things that destroy it? They try to escape their internal unrest through codependent relationships, excessive consumption, compulsive work, or any other form of distraction. Jung understood that these behaviors are attempts to evade the encounter with oneself, with those parts that frighten or discomfort us. But true peace doesn't come from avoiding but from confronting and accepting. One of Jung's most powerful teachings is that we all carry within us the resources we need to weather life's storms. He called it the self, that essential core that contains our innate wisdom, our capacity for adaptation, and our inner strength. It's not something we need to create. It's something that already exists within us. The work consists of clearing the obstacles that prevent us from accessing it. Think for a moment about the people you admire, those who seem to have an unshakable serenity in the face of challenges. It's not that they don't feel pain, fear, or uncertainty. It's that they've learned not to completely identify with those emotions. They've developed the ability to observe the storm without being dragged away by it. This is the essence of being your own peace, not denying the storm, but finding that space of stillness at its center. Jung firmly believed in the importance of introspection and self-knowledge. In our age of constant distraction, dedicating time to reflection might seem like a luxury, but it's actually a vital necessity for psychological well-being. Without that space to connect with your inner world, you're at the mercy of external currents, always reacting instead of consciously responding. When was the last time you sat in silence, without distractions, simply to listen to what emerges from within? For many, the very idea is uncomfortable. We prefer to keep busy, surrounded by noise, because silence forces us to face what we've been avoiding. But Jung reminds us that this encounter, though challenging, is the path to authentic and lasting peace. The journey toward becoming your own peace also implies a re-evaluation of your relationships. Jung observed that we often project onto others our expectations, needs, and unrecognized parts of ourselves. When you expect someone else to be the source of your peace, you're delegating your personal power. This doesn't mean you should isolate yourself. It means relating from a place of fullness instead of lack. Conscious relationships, according to Jung, are those in which we allow ourselves to be authentic, vulnerable, and honest, where we don't seek for the other to fill our voids or calm our storms, but we share our being from a place of integrity. When you depend on others for your inner peace, you're building on sand. Any change in that relationship can destabilize you, but when your peace comes from your connection with yourself, you have a solid foundation that no external circumstance can easily shake. This leads us to another fundamental concept in Jung's thinking: the importance of establishing healthy boundaries. Many people sacrifice their inner peace for fear of disappointing others, for the need for approval, or simply for having internalized the idea that their needs are less important than those of others. Jung reminds us that honoring your own boundaries isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. Every time you ignore your boundaries, say yes when your inner being is screaming no, you're creating an internal dissonance that erodes your peace. Learning to establish clear boundaries is an act of self-love that, paradoxically, also benefits your relationships. Because when you relate from authenticity and self-respect, you inspire others to do the same. One of the biggest obstacles to finding inner peace is resistance to change. Jung observed that the ego often clings to the known, even when it's painful, out of fear of the unknown. That fear keeps us stuck in situations, relationships, and patterns that drain our energy and disturb our peace. The path to becoming your own peace involves developing the courage to let go of what no longer serves you, to make space for new possibilities. What are you holding on to in your life that no longer resonates with your inner truth? What beliefs, relationships, or commitments have you maintained out of fear of what would happen if you let them go? Jung invites us to examine these areas because he knows that every aspect of your life that isn't aligned with your essence creates an internal friction that disturbs your peace. The process of individuation that Jung described isn't a straight path toward a fixed goal. It's a spiral journey where we revisit the same themes at increasingly deeper levels of understanding and acceptance. There will be moments of clarity and peace, and moments of confusion and struggle. The important thing isn't to avoid the struggle, but to learn to move through it with consciousness, using it as an opportunity for greater self-knowledge. Jung firmly believed in synchronicity, that mysterious connection between our inner world and external events. He observed that when we begin to align with our true nature, the outer world seems to respond in surprising ways. The right opportunities appear, the right people enter our lives, and seemingly casual events take on a profound meaning. This isn't magical thinking. It's a reflection of how our perception and energy change when we're at peace with ourselves. We're no longer fighting against the current, but flowing with it. We're not trying to force outcomes based on our fears or lacks, but allowing life to unfold from a place of trust and internal alignment. The peace that comes from this place isn't fragile or dependent on specific circumstances. It's robust, capable of sustaining you even in the most challenging moments. It's not that you don't feel pain, fear, or sadness. It's that you're no longer completely identified by these emotions. You've developed the capacity to be the observer of your experience, to maintain an internal anchor even when the external waves are turbulent. Jung also recognized the power of symbols and rituals to connect us with our depths. In our rational and technological society, we've lost much of this symbolic dimension that nourishes the soul. Recovering practices that help you honor your transitions, celebrate your achievements, and process your losses can be a powerful tool for cultivating inner peace. This could be as simple as creating a sacred space in your home where you can reflect, meditate, or simply be. Or it could involve developing personal rituals that mark significant moments in your life. Jung understood that these symbolic acts aren't mere superstitions, but bridges to our unconscious, to those parts of us that can't be reached through rational thought alone. A particularly valuable practice that Jung developed was active imagination, a conscious dialogue with the images and symbols that emerge from our unconscious. Through this practice, we can establish a more fluid relationship between our consciousness and the depths of our being, integrating aspects that would otherwise remain fragmented. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to live from this place of integration and inner peace. Not immune to challenges, but capable of facing them without losing your center. Not dependent on external approval, but anchored in your inherent value. Not fragmented between different aspects of yourself, but in a state of growing integration and fullness. This isn't an idealized or unattainable state, it's your birthright, your essential nature, when you remove the layers of conditioning, fear, and disconnection. Jung dedicated his life to helping us remember this truth, to chart a map that guides us back home, to that place within us, where peace isn't something we seek, but something we are. The path isn't always easy, but every step you take toward greater self-knowledge and acceptance is a step toward becoming your own peace. And in a world as turbulent as ours, this might be the most powerful form of resistance. Refusing to be defined by external chaos, consciously choosing to create an internal sanctuary from which you can relate to life from clarity instead of fear. Jung reminded us that your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. This awakening is the birth of a peace that no one can give you and no one can take away, because it emerges from your reconnection with your essential nature. In times of uncertainty and constant change, when external foundations seem increasingly unstable, Jung's invitation becomes even more relevant. Become your own peace, not as an act of escape from the world, but as a way of relating to it from a place of integrity, wisdom, and compassion. Because in the end, as Jung deeply understood, the peace we cultivate within ourselves isn't just for our personal benefit. It's a contribution to the world. Each person who finds their center, who learns to be their own peace in the midst of the storm, creates a space where others can do the same. It's an act of personal transformation with collective implications. Think for a moment, how would the world change if each of us took responsibility for our inner peace? If instead of looking for external blame for our discomfort, we looked honestly within ourselves? If instead of demanding that the world adapt to our expectations, we learned to navigate wisely the realities we cannot change? Jung challenges us to consider that maybe, just maybe, the peace we seek in the world must begin within each of us. Not as an abstract idea, but as a daily practice of self-knowledge, integration, and acceptance. A practice that, over time, transforms us from seekers of peace to embodiments of it. Are you ready to take the first step on this journey? To look with honesty and compassion at the parts of yourself that you've denied or repressed? To question the limiting beliefs that keep you trapped in patterns that disturb your peace? To let go of relationships, situations, and habits that are no longer aligned with your deepest truth? You don't need to do it all at once. As Jung himself suggested, small conscious steps can lead to profound transformations. Perhaps you can begin simply by creating spaces of silence in your day, moments to connect with your interior without distractions. Or maybe you can start paying more attention to your dreams, those windows to your unconscious that Jung valued so much. Perhaps the first step is simply the conscious intention to observe your reactions, especially those that seem disproportionate or that repeat in patterns. These reactions often point to aspects of your shadow that seek recognition and integration. Or perhaps you can start by asking yourself what peace would really mean for you, beyond conventional definitions or external expectations. What's important isn't so much where you begin, but that you start the journey with a clear intention and a commitment to your truth. Because as Jung taught us, the path to inner peace isn't a straight line or a final destination, but an ongoing process of discovery, integration, and growth. And as you advance on this path, remember that you're not alone. Others before you have walked similar paths, faced similar challenges, and found their way to becoming their own peace. Their stories, including Jung's own, can inspire and guide you. But in the end, your path will be unique, as singular as you are. The greatest gift you can give yourself and the world is the commitment to reconnect with your essence, to integrate your shadows and lights, to become an increasingly complete being and therefore a source of genuine peace. Not a fragile peace that depends on perfect circumstances, but a robust peace that can sustain and transform even the most challenging moments. As a community that values personal growth and authenticity, I invite you to share in the comments how this message resonates with you. Which aspects of Jung's teachings have touched you most deeply? What steps are you willing to take toward becoming your own peace? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this message has touched something in you, I encourage you to share it with those who might benefit. In times of so much noise and superficiality, deep and meaningful conversations are more valuable than ever. Each time you choose to share content that invites reflection and growth, you're contributing to positive change in the world. And if you're not yet part of this community, I invite you to join, subscribe, turn on notifications, and connect with other seekers on this journey of self-discovery and transformation. Together, we can create a space where the profound teachings of thinkers like Jung come to life, not as abstract theories, but as practical tools for a more conscious and fulfilling life. Thank you for being here, for dedicating time to nourish your inner world in a society that primarily values the external. Your commitment to your personal growth isn't a selfish act. It's an essential contribution to a world that desperately needs centered, conscious individuals at peace with themselves. Always remember Jung's words, "Know yourself, and you will know the universe and the gods." The peace you seek isn't in some distant place. It's waiting to be discovered within you, in that sacred space where, even in the midst of the fiercest storm, you can find an immutable center of calm, clarity, and connection. Until our next encounter, I invite you to embrace the challenge and adventure of becoming your own peace, not as a final destination, but as a continuous journey of discovery, acceptance, and transformation. A journey that, as Jung taught us, not only changes our individual life, but contributes to the collective healing of our world.